Hey, it's Benjie Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio, welcoming you to another edition of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org, for more info, or you can email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Aly Bruner. We'll be discussing his book, Seeking Rainbow's End, A Fortune Hunter's Tale of Risk and Reward, available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Aly was brought to People of Distinction today by some of the best movers in the business, Parchment Global Publishing. If you have a book that you'd like moved, well, move it to Parchment. You can find them at parchmentglobalpublishing.com. And guys, I'm so excited to have Aly here on the line because the book we're going to be discussing, Seeking Rainbow's End. All right, listen, it's a memoir, okay? So it's going to be taken directly from Aly's experience. But guys, I'm so glad that we have him here on the line to share these experiences because listen, once he starts to go into some of these stories, if you were to just read these on the page and you didn't hear him saying it specifically to you, I promise you, you would not believe any of the stories he's about to share with us. They are that incredible. I mean, it's something taken directly out of a Hollywood film. And listen, Aly's going to be able to explain all of the details much better than I ever could. So without further ado, we have him here on the line with us. Aly, first and foremost, man, thank you so much for being a guest today with us on People of Distinction. How are you?
Very good. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Aly, let's jump right in, okay? Seeking Rainbow's End, A Fortune Hunter's Tale of Risk and Reward. Tell us a little bit about the book.
Well, I never graduated from high school. I started my business with $400, and I'm a multimillionaire now.
Wow.
What got me out of the diamond business is I was almost murdered at Los Angeles Airport in the parking lot. I was set up to be murdered by a girl that I dated one time. Her sister stabbed me in the chest. Her brother tried to cut my throat. I had $3 million worth of diamonds on me. And there was a cousin I couldn't identify. I followed him down 2 flights of stairs into another parking structure where there were a lot of people. And I yelled at him to drop my case or I was going to kill him. He dropped it and ran. A woman came over and said, "What can I do to help you?" I said, call the police, call an ambulance, and I told her, please watch my case. It's very valuable. Mm-hmm. And she didn't leave my side. So the police got there first. One of them put on his surgical gloves, pressed against my chest where I was bleeding profusely. And he turns to his partner and says, he's not going to make it. What an asshole. At any rate, they rushed me to UCLA Medical Center. I needed 6 units of blood to stabilize my condition. I was put into intensive care. I gave them specific instructions not to let anybody know what room I'm in except for my girlfriend, Nancy. So Sheridan called and they were stupid enough to tell her what room I was in. So then I said, you got to get me out of this room, change my rooms. And they changed my name to Mario Sanchez. And I still have the wristbands as souvenirs. And then she went ahead and called them again. And they told her again what room I was in. So then they moved me and I was really William Jackson. And I still have the wristbands as souvenirs. But at any rate, before the trials, Sheridan went to the Hells Angels to try and get them to murder me before the trial started. Her brother was tried first. He was found guilty and they gave him 14 years in prison. Her sister that stabbed me in the chest got 7 years in prison, and she had a baby while she was in prison. Sheridan had a brilliant defense, absolutely brilliant. She told the jury that I was there to trade diamonds for drugs, and that the diamonds were fake, and the drug dealer had a diamond expert to authenticate that they were real diamonds, and the drug dealer is the one that stabbed me. The jury believed her and found her not guilty. She walked away with getting off scot-free.
Wow. You know, Aly, that's just one story. I mean, first of all, that is absolutely incredible that she was able to get released free. And listen, as you stated, right? I mean, that is actually a really good defense. Not siding with her, of course, but to be able to come up with that to make sure that she would kind of get through this relatively unscathed and walk away scot-free, that was a really, really good defense on her part. What an incredible story. Now that's just one. No, I do remember reading a funny little story pertaining to that. I mean, you ended up leaving the hospital prematurely, correct?
Yes, I wanted to go see the Golden State Warriors basketball game. I had season tickets, so why waste the season tickets? and the doctor, I promised him that I would go straight home and stay in bed. I had an angiogram done that they cut open a vein in your groin, and they stick dye in there to see if my heart or any of my internal organs had been damaged. So I went to the Warriors game, and I'm jumping up and down, yelling at the refs, and I ended up with a golf ball size blood clot, and they had to take me to the hospital at Eden Hospital in Castro Valley. And the doctor said, "What in the world were you doing at a basketball game?" And I said, "Well, Doc, I wasn't playing. I was just watching it." And he goes, "You're crazy." He said, and what really pissed Nancy off is the next game was Michael Jordan playing against the Warriors, and we missed that game. So she was so pissed.
I mean, listen, if you're going to leave the hospital to go to a game with Michael Jordan playing in it, right? It's fantastic. All right, Aly, listen, let's hold off on the other stories. I definitely want to revisit them later on. Next question that I have pertaining to your book is, talk to us about the title. I mean, such an intriguing title, Seeking Rainbow's End. The second part, of course, is pretty straightforward, a fortune hunter's tale of risk and reward. We understand that. But Seeking Rainbow's End, I can assume and speculate really why you decided to name your book that and the meaning on what it connects to. But talk to our listening audience. How did you develop that title?
Well, when I left California, because I had post-traumatic stress disorder so bad, I couldn't work. And I left California and moved to Idaho. And the reason it's Seeking Rainbow's End is my girlfriend Nancy and my 2 kids, we went on 3 trips, one to Oregon, one to Montana, one to Wyoming, and then the one with Wyoming, we were driving through Idaho. All of a sudden there was a rainbow, and the skies were absolutely crystal clear. There was a cloud burst that rained for maybe 10 minutes, and then after the cloud burst, there was a rainbow that went from the left side of the highway to the right-hand side of the highway. I got goosebumps, and I turned to Nancy, my girlfriend, and my kids, and I said, "We're going to find where we're going to live today, the rest of our life." So it was hot, and we went to a gas station, and typically whenever we would go into an area, I would give Nancy, and Nancy's a Stanford graduate. She has a lifetime teaching credential. She taught U.S. history and French. I never graduated from high school, so I always give her the flyers to look into finding out if there's something that's perfect that we would want to live. Mm-hmm. And we had a shopping list. It had to be on a river with good hunting, good fishing, and the reason the book is called Seeking Rainbow's End, because I found my pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Now, on with the story. She opened it up, and a flyer fell in her lap with exactly the information that we wanted in a piece of property. So she turns to me and she goes, "Is this a joke? Did you put this in there?" And I said, "No." So I said, "Give me that. I'll call the guy." So I called him on the phone. I said, "Is this property still for sale?" He goes, "Is it for sale? We just passed them out this morning." So I said, "Well, we're very interested in seeing the property." He said, "Well, come on over." So it was about a 4-hour drive. We got there. As I drove down the driveway, I started crying. I said, "This is it. This is absolutely it." So he showed us the property, and the property had $500,000 worth of landscaping on it. So it's 10.5 acres on the Salmon River. So we went into his office and I said, "What's your best price?" And he gave me a figure that was very, very reasonable. And my daughters were sitting on his lap, and he goes, "Hold on, son, let me ask you a question." He goes, "Where do you live?" I said, "Well, I live on a ranch in Castro Valley, California." He turns to Nancy, my girlfriend, and says, "Tell me where you live." She goes, "Well, I was born and raised in San Francisco." He goes, "Oh, I can't sell you this property. It'd be a culture shock. There's no malls to shop here." So I'm almost falling apart in pieces because he wouldn't sell it to us. So he goes, "I'll tell you what I'll do. You go home for 30 days. And after the 30 days, if you still want to buy it, I'll sell it to you." We called him every day. And on day like 14 or 15, he goes, "Don't worry, young man, I've got somebody that'll pay me a lot more for the property." Well, originally I'd asked him to put it in writing. He says, "You don't need it in writing. My word's good." So at the end of the 30 days, he sold it to us for the price that we agreed on, and he was offered $200,000 more than we were paying. And to this day, I consider him an honorary father.
Wow. Well, yeah, I mean, for him to be able to forego 200,000 or 200 extra thousand on top of that, I mean, that was amazing. Now, I'm sure it lends a lot of credence to just the initial conversation that you guys had, but also showing the constant dedication to be calling him every single day and showing that much interest in the property. I mean, that is fantastic. What an amazing story. Here on the line with Aly Bruner, we're discussing his book, Seeking Rainbow's End, A Fortune Hunter's Tale of Risk and Reward, available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Now, Aly, next question that I really want to get into is let's talk about inspiration. Okay, now, of course, we know what inspired this narrative, right? In the experiences, of course, that culminate in this book. Now, talk to our listening audience. When did you first realize you wanted to be a writer, and really what inspired you to go on that creative journey?
Well, I'm 70 years old now, and 3 years ago, I decided to put everything down in writing. And by the way, my father always taught me that your handshake means more than any contract you sign. And that's the way Forrest was, that his word was good. And my dad said, if you shake hands on something like that, you can never renege. And my father passed away when he was 93, and he didn't want anybody to come visit him in the hospital because he didn't want any of us to see him suffering. Mm-hmm. And I've only been to one funeral in my life, and that was my stepmom. And I told my wife, Nancy, if she dies before me, I'm going to kill her.
You know, really kind of taking a step back in terms of, you know, what your father imparted on you in terms of the importance of, you know, of a handshake. I think that in and of itself is something that is so beautiful, because nowadays, listen, man, that's something that a lot of people wouldn't honor, right? And a lot of times people would take the money and they'd run, and it's fantastic to hear that there are still people like that in the world, and that you were able to come across one, and you yourself are one, because that's the way you were raised. And that in and of itself, again, is beautiful, and it's such a great thing. Now, you just started writing, you said in the pre-screen call, you said you just started writing about 3 years ago, and, you know, you kind of hinted towards your age. So would it be safe to say that the reason why you felt that this book needed to be written, and it wasn't good enough to just, you know, express these experiences to those around you verbally, but really you wanted to put it out there for the public, is it almost a way of kind of leaving a legacy behind, that's the reason why you almost felt the need or the spur of inspiration to make sure that it was published?
Yes. Positively, yes.
Wonderful. You know, and I think that concept in and of itself, I think is something that is so relatable. You know, it's an interesting thing. It's funny. I actually had this conversation with my grandmother not too long ago. She also, a few years back, maybe about 6 years ago now, she started to write her own memoir. And at first, I thought it was just really something that she was writing just to kind of get some ideas on page and put it out there. But as I've gotten older and I've given it more time, and through discussions that I've had with her, that is her way. You know, again, it's that old thing. Listen, not all of us get to be written about in the history books, right? As much as we would love that to be the case, that isn't. And just because other people aren't writing about you doesn't mean your story can't be told. We all have a voice. And we all can very easily take the initiative and put the words to the page ourselves and really take that initiative. And I think that that's fantastic, because what a great legacy. Hey, the stories that you're sharing are absolutely incredible in its own right. But even regardless of that, being able to leave something for your kids and for future generations where they can look back and they can read that, I think is such a wonderful and a fantastic idea, and something that you really need to be commended on in taking that leap of faith and really, again, acknowledging your mortality and putting the words on page that way. Now, Aly, this is fantastic. Okay, now as we tie up this interview, please, listen, I know you have stories for days, and we love listening to them. And guys, you know what you need to do. If you want to share on all the experiences that Aly has put out there in his book, you got to go to Amazon, you got to go to Barnes & Noble and pick up your copy of Seeking Rainbow's End, a fortune hunter's teller of risk and reward. But while we're still here and while we still have you on the line, Aly, if you can share another one of your stories, please, to take us out of this fantastic interview, we'd love it.
Well, I think one of the major ones that comes to mind is I had $15,000 in the bank, and we had accounts payable and payroll to make, and I needed $54,000. So I told Nancy, my girlfriend, I said, go get the $15,000, get us 2 round-trip tickets to Las Vegas, and we got there, and I said, here's $1,000, go play blackjack. She goes, I'm not going to play blackjack. So I said, well, I'm going to hit the crap table. So she goes to this machine where there's horses that go around, and the odds change all the time. So, and I hit the crap table, and I started with $5,000, and I ran it up to 25. No, was it 25,300, and I gave $300 tip to the stick man for saying thank you. And then I went and found Nancy. Nancy was playing all the long shots. I said, "What are you doing? You're playing the long shots." She goes, "Well, I've been hitting them like crazy." So I said, "Come on, let's go to lunch." We were walking by a sports bar, and the 49ers were playing in Atlanta, and it was 49ers plus 6. You got the 49ers plus 6 points. Mm-hmm. So I took the $20,000 worth of chips that I had, and I pushed them on the counter, and Nancy started having a fit. She goes, "You can't do that. They always lose in Atlanta." I said, "Well," I said, you go to reserve us a table for lunch, and I'll be right back." So behind her back, I placed the $20,000 bet plus $7,500 I had cash in my pocket. So I'm betting $27,500 on the game. And she goes, "Where have you been?" And I handed her the ticket where I showed her I bet $27,500. If she had football cleats on, she would have kicked me in the groin. At any rate, the funniest thing I ever saw was her watching the game in our hotel room. And that's probably one of the most entertaining things I've ever seen in my life. At any rate, the bottom line is, not only did the 49ers come through, but they actually won the game. And something that I heard that is a true story, Joe Montana was needing a touchdown in order to win the game. And this is a different story, different football game altogether. And he went in a huddle to his buddies or his teammates, and he goes, "You see that blonde on the 50-yard line?" He goes, "Isn't she gorgeous?" And everybody's laughing. So he goes, "All right, boys, cover me." And he threw a strike and won the game. I had a girlfriend, this was like in 1983 or 84, and her name was Rita. And we took my Ferrari up to Calistoga to go hang glide or go on a glider where they pull you up in a plane and let you go. And so I asked the guy, I said, "Can you do any aerobatics?" He goes, "Sure I can." I said, "Well, go for it." And then he goes, at any rate, he started doing all these maneuvers, and his boss saw him on the ground, and there was a horde of people watching the display of talent, going, doing loops, going upside down, doing stalls. At any rate, so we'd get on the ground, and I turned to Rita. I said, "Let's go up one more time." So she goes, "All right, let's go." So we get up in the plane or the glider, and I go, "Okay, come on, do your thing." He goes, "I can't. The boss saw me, and he said if I ever do that again, I'm fired." So I'm pissed off. I get down on the ground, I jump into my Ferrari, and I spin donuts on the grass to tear it up. Then we started to head home, and it was on a 2-lane highway that I knew very well. And I flew by a highway patrolman at about 135 miles an hour. He turns on his siren and lights. And I turned to Rita and I said, "We've got cocaine in the car, and I don't want us to get busted for drugs." So I bounced it up to 160 miles an hour. I was far enough ahead that I knew there's no way he would know where I would take a turnoff. So there was a dirt road next to a vineyard, and I drove down the road slowly so it didn't create any dust. We hid behind a tree, and there was a barn behind us, and 8 highway patrolmen showed up at where we were, and we pulled out a blanket and opened up a bottle of wine, pretended like we were having a picnic, and the sergeant, and I'm 6'5", the sergeant was about 5'7", 5'8", and he started belly bumping me, trying to get me to take a swing at him. So I told Rita before they got there, I said, don't say a word. They don't know who was driving the car, and they can't arrest anybody because there's no witness that they could positively identify anybody. So the sergeant goes, we know it was you. There's no way a woman could drive like that. And she yells out, it was me driving. Big mistake. So they put the handcuffs on her and hauled her to jail. And he wanted to take away my Ferrari keys. He goes, you're too intoxicated to drive. So I said, watch this. I did a handstand and walked all the way around my Ferrari. I said, could I do that if I was intoxicated? He goes, it doesn't matter. I'm taking your keys anyway. At any rate, so they hauled her to jail. And one of the highway patrolmen was very nice. He said, let me take you to jail so you can bail her out. Not only did he let me bail her out, he actually took both of us back to the Ferrari so we could drive home. At any rate, so belly bumping me is actually assault. And there was 7 highway patrolmen watching him do that. So I contacted my attorney. I said, I want to file charges for assault, and which we did formally. Mm-hmm. Then I got a call from Internal Affairs. They said, Mr. Bruner, we'd like to meet with you. And I went, okay, what do you want? And she goes, we'll explain it to you when we see you in person. So I said, all right. And I gave them my address, told them where I lived, how to get there. They showed up and they go, Mr. Bruner, we got a problem. I go, what's that? He goes, we want you to drop the assault charges, and here's what we can do for you. I said, what? He goes, if you'll drop the assault charges, we'll reduce Rita's ticket to driving 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. So I said, that's fine, but under one condition. I want a written letter of apology from the guy that was belly bumping me, which I got. And so the bottom line is, life without risk is a life not worth living.
Wow. Aly, listen, man, like I said, if I didn't have you here on the line telling me these stories, I wouldn't believe any one of them. Okay. I would just say, listen, this all sounds way too good to be true. It's all way too, I wouldn't believe it. I just wouldn't believe it. Your story in your life has been absolutely incredible. Again, if you haven't been approached yet by some Hollywood executives, be prepared, man, because I'll be very surprised if they don't just come to you and start just picking your brain for ideas for their upcoming scripts, because you're just full of them. And these stories are absolutely incredible. Guys, one last time, here on the line with Aly Bruner. We just finished discussing his book, Seeking Rainbow's End, A Fortune Hunter's Tale of Risk and Reward, available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Aly, this has been absolutely a pleasure. Thank you so much for being a guest with us today on People of Distinction.
Thank you for having me on. I think it was outstanding.